What is a radio repeater? Typically with a handheld radio, you would transmit from one radio to another, and that's called back-to-back transmitting. You could have a license-free radio, and that would be on a certain power transmitting to another radio, or you could have a radio license, and then you have a little bit more power to transmit from one to another. With more power means you can transmit further and through more obstacles. For example, if you've got a more built-up area with more buildings, then you need more radio transmitting power to transmit through those buildings, and it will also depend on what type of buildings or obstructions are in the way. If, for example, there's something like a hill in the way, then you're not going to be able to transmit through that, so you might need something called a radio repeater. How that works is the radios, rather than transmitting to one another, they transmit to the radio repeater, and in general this would be mounted in the center of a site. If there is a hill, for example, on your site, then the radio repeater would go at the top of the hill with a mast like this. This would go in a high up point, and all the radios have got a better line of sight to the top of that mast. What it also then does is the radio repeater has got more power than the handheld radios. All these radios have to transmit up to that easy to reach point, and then the repeater bounces that signal out across the entire site with even more power, giving you much better coverage and clarity with the radio system. Radio repeaters then make your radio system that little bit more complicated. So you can see we've got 3 here, and these are deployable systems. So they're mounted in heli cases, which means that they can be used in outdoors so that the equipment doesn't get wet or damaged or damp or anything like that. One of the main distinguishing factors between a back-to-back radio system and a repeater system is that a back-to-back radio normally has something like 16 channels. A repeater system in digital tends to operate on 2 channels. They have 2 time slots, which means you can power 2 digital channels at once. What we tend to find is that sites will have a single repeater if they've got relatively normal radio traffic, where they have 2 channels operating on the repeated channels, which are those will be the channels that have got the most power, and then the rest of the channels on the radio, 3 to 16, will be back-to-back, which also means that if the repeater would go down for any reason, channels 3 to 16 will continue to operate because they're cutting the repeater out of the communications chain essentially. This type of radio system doesn't just come out of a box. This is something we're very experienced in. We've been doing it for over 35 years. If you're having coverage issues on your site or your radios just aren't working properly, please do get in touch and we can bespoke engineer a system like this for you. This can be massively expanded across various sites. You can have multi-sites linked together with IP connection. There's almost nothing you can't do with a radio system like this. Get in touch and we can build you a system. Make sure you visit our website, call us or pop us an email, and we'll do our best to help you out.